I was scrubbing the remnants of dinner from our kitchen counter when I first felt it, a prickling unease that sent a chill racing up my spine. The clock on the wall glowed 9 p.m., and the silence in the house felt ominously dense. Wendy was never late, not without a good reason, so why was the house so still? The usual hum of conversation that followed her return was absent, replaced instead by a weight of foreboding that I couldn't shake. Instinctively, I reached for my phone and tapped her name. The call went unanswered, eventually slipping into voicemail. I tried to brush it off with rational thoughts, a forgotten charger, a delayed meeting, but deep down, I sensed that something was gravely amiss. Needing answers, I called Janine, one of Wendy's co-workers, hoping for a straightforward explanation. Her tone was brisk, almost detached as she replied, "Wendy left work at 6 p.m., Walter. 2 hours earlier than the usual time we'd hear about her day." The news hit me hard, and every second since then seemed to stretch into an eternity filled with doubts. I prodded for more details, but Janine's curt responses only deepened the fog of uncertainty swirling in my mind. As I paced near the window, every creak of the old floorboards and every shifting shadow in the dim light took on a sinister significance. Outside, the quiet street offered no solace, only a mirror of the confusion inside me. My pulse quickened with every tick of the clock, each moment fueling a growing sense of betrayal and despair. Then, in what felt like the culmination of a long, unbearable wait, the front door clicked open. Wendy appeared in the doorway, her expression unervingly serene despite the storm raging inside me. She hesitated, as if briefly weighing my reaction, and then said in a tone that was too polished, "I got held up at work. My phone died, and I didn't have a charger." The explanation was too neat, too rehearsed. I could almost taste the insincerity in her words. I studied her closely, the nonchalant flick of her hand as she draped her jacket over her shoulder, the faint tremor in her fingers as she set down her bag. The familiar comfort of our home now felt foreign and hostile, every detail underscored by the discord between Janine's report and her smooth excuse. Questions piled up inside me, each one echoing with the sting of betrayal. Standing there, caught between anger and sorrow, I felt the ground shift beneath me. The life I thought I knew was crumbling, each piece of evidence nudging me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. With my heart pounding and my voice barely steady, I finally asked, "Wendy, what really happened tonight?" Just as those words left my lips, a silence more profound than before enveloped us, leaving me to wonder if this was only the beginning of a much darker unraveling. Wendy casually tossed her purse onto the living room couch. "I need to take a shower and have dinner. I haven't eaten all day," she said, her voice too light, too rehearsed, as if rehearsing lines on stage. I forced a nod, unable to muster a response, and watched her retreat to the bathroom without a backward glance. The silence she left behind was thick, almost tangible, a void that made every ticking second feel like a betrayal. I sank into the sofa, trying to steady my thoughts. The lingering warmth of her presence mixed with a cold sting of suspicion. I knew something was wrong, but tonight, I felt the pull of a dark certainty urging me to piece together the clues hidden in plain sight. My eyes roamed the room until they fell upon the purse. That's when I saw it, a glimpse of fabric, an edge of underwear, peeking out from the slightly unzipped compartment. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, an uninvited confirmation that something was amiss. I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was a small detail, but in that split second, it shattered whatever fragile trust had been holding me together. My mind whirled with conflicting thoughts. Should I confront her right then, demand answers, expose the lie? Or should I wait, gather more evidence, and confront her when I was sure? The question gnawed at me, each passing second deepening the chasm of doubt and despair. The room grew stifling, every sound amplified in the heavy silence that filled our home. Determined yet cautious, I carefully picked up the purse, my hands trembling as I held it. I slid over to the kitchen, seeking refuge in its cold, sterile lighting, and sat there with the purse on the table in front of me. The clink of the cutlery, the hum of the refrigerator, even the soft creak of the floorboards underfoot became a metronome to my escalating heartbeat. Each moment I spent in that kitchen was a battle between my rational mind and the raw emotion that screamed out in every fiber of my being. I examined the purse again, my eyes retracing the outline of that incriminating glimpse. The fabric was unmistakable, the kind I'd never seen before on her. Doubt quickly turned to grim certainty. I was drowning in a flood of memories, the countless small moments of her inexplicable absences, the vague alibis, the hushed phone conversations I'd overheard. Every memory coalesced into one undeniable truth. Wendy had been lying to me. As I sat there, torn between anger and sorrow, the urge to confront her warred with the need to understand the full scope of her betrayal. I wasn't ready to shatter the illusion of our life together without knowing every painful detail. Instead, I made a choice. I would keep this knowledge secret for now, gathering the courage and evidence I needed before the storm of confrontation broke loose. In that quiet, tense moment, as the sound of water beginning to run in the bathroom seeped faintly through the door, I resolved to wait. I'd let the silence speak a little longer while I steeled myself against the inevitable pain of the truth. My heart ached with the weight of betrayal, but beneath the agony, a quiet determination began to form. This was not the end. It was a necessary, painful step towards reclaiming the truth, even if it meant facing the darkness alone. The sound of the bathroom door creaking open was like a starting pistol in a race I hadn't meant to run. There she stood, Wendy, emerging from the steamy confines of the shower, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders, wrapped in a towel that did little to hide the tremor of her unease. I couldn't tear my eyes away, fixed on her as if my stare alone might force out the truth I so desperately craved. The charged atmosphere between us was palpable, the air heavy with things unsaid, and in that instant, I knew there was no turning back. "Wendy," I said, my voice low and laden with a mix of fury and heartbreak. I couldn't hold back any longer. I needed answers. I stepped from the doorway into the living room, each stride echoing my rising tension, and pointed directly at the purse resting innocently on the table. "What's this doing here?" I asked, holding it out as if it were a tangible piece of my shattered trust. "Why'd you toss it on the couch like that?" Her eyes widened, confusion battling with panic. I just needed a moment," she stuttered, barely meeting my gaze. I wasn't willing to let her off the hook this time. I slowly lifted the purse, deliberately revealing a hint of fabric, a sliver of lingerie I recognized all too well from the morning. My hand quivered as I held it up for her to see. "Explain this, Wendy. Why is the same underwear you wore earlier in the day tucked away in your bag?" For a moment, time seemed to slow. Her face drained of color, and an oppressive silence fell between us, so thick it nearly choked me. Finally, she managed a weak, "I don't know what you mean." But the feebleness of her reply only ignited the blaze of my suspicion further. "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my tone sharpening with every syllable. "You didn't work late tonight. I spoke with someone from your office. They said you left at 6 p.m. So where did you really go?" I stepped closer, my shadow falling over her as the distance between us evaporated. Every heartbeat thundered in my ears as I awaited her response, the silence growing ever more unbearable. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for a lifeline, a story that might mend this widening rift. "Walter, please," she began, but her plea was cut short by the weight of her own guilt, as if she suddenly realized how deep the hole had become. The truth, no matter how desperately she'd tried to hide it, was clawing its way out from beneath the layers of deceit. "Save it," I said, my voice a mix of bitter disbelief and seething anger. "I trusted you with my heart, and you chose to throw it away for someone else." I could feel the sting of every broken promise and every silent warning that I had once ignored. "You've been lying to me about everything, about where you were, who you were with. And now this little detail here." I gestured to the exposed lingerie with a grim smile. "It speaks louder than any excuse could." Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped forward, desperation etched across her face. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered, her voice cracking under the strain of her confession. "I was just lost. Confused. The vulnerability in her tone only deepened the wound, exposing the raw nerve of betrayal that now lay bare between us. I took a step back, the flood of memories, the quiet evenings, shared laughter, small moments of tenderness, colliding violently with the harsh reality of her betrayal. Confused. I repeated bitterly. You call this confusion? To me, it looks like you willingly chose another path, a path that led you away from everything we built together. My words spilled out, harsh and unyielding, each one an echo of the shattered trust that now lay in ruins. Wendy's eyes filled with remorse as she tried to close the distance between us, as if a simple apology could bridge the gap her actions had created. But as she moved closer, her words faltered. I met someone, she finally managed, her voice a fragile whisper that carried the weight of an irreversible decision. The admission hit me like a bolt of lightning. Each syllable confirmed the worst of my fears. After leaving work at 6 p.m.? I demanded, the disbelief mingling with a seething rage. How could you? How could you betray everything we ever had? I took another step forward, and in that charged moment, every memory of our past together, every promise made, crumbled beneath the weight of her confession. She tried to reach out, her hands trembling in an earnest plea, but I recoiled as if burned. I never meant for any of this to happen, she repeated, her voice breaking, laden with regret. But regret wasn't enough to erase the undeniable evidence of her deception. The stolen moments, the hidden rendezvous, the small but damning details that now lay before me. My heart pounded so fiercely that I could hardly hear her. I don't want your excuses, Wendy. I want the truth. And from what I see here, I said, my voice faltering as I pointed to the purse, the truth is a betrayal that runs deeper than I ever imagined. The air between us was heavy with the unspoken admission of years of silence, and the room itself seemed to shrink under the oppressive weight of our shared history. In that surreal, heart-wrenching instant, I knew there was no salvaging what we had lost. Every lie, every whispered secret, had led us to this irrevocable crossroads. The finality of the moment was suffocating, and I felt the crushing certainty that our lives, our love, were now irreparably fractured. Then, with an uncharacteristic calm that belied the turmoil inside, I delivered the final blow. Wendy, I said, my voice cold and resolute, I can't do this anymore. Pack your things and leave. I need to find a way to rebuild my life without the shadow of your betrayal hanging over me. Her face contorted with shock and sorrow, and for one agonizing moment, neither of us moved, just two souls caught in the wreckage of what once was love. Then, as if the universe had issued its final decree, the sound of a distant siren echoed through the night, a stark reminder that life, despite its cruel twists, marches relentlessly on. And just as the gravity of our situation threatened to pull us under, the lights flickered ominously, plunging the room into a fleeting darkness that promised more secrets and unforeseen consequences. In that instant, I realized that this night, with all its pain and betrayal, was far from over. The moment the door clicked shut behind her departure, an oppressive silence swallowed me whole. I sank into the battered armchair in our living room, surrounded by the ruins of a life we once shared. Every ticking second echoed like a taunt, a relentless reminder of the warmth and closeness now shattered beyond repair. My thoughts spun in a chaotic swirl of anger, sorrow, and self-reproach. How had our once bright future spiraled into this darkness? I stared blankly at the faded wallpaper, once a comforting backdrop to our happiest days, now a mocking testament to lost promises. The confrontation replayed in my mind with agonizing clarity. Her quivering voice, the haunted glimmer in her eyes, and that gut-wrenching admission of betrayal. I had braced myself for fury or denial, yet what I found was a raw, trembling vulnerability that cut deeper than any harsh rebuke could. It left me suspended between the urge to lash out and the unbearable pain of losing the woman I thought I truly knew. In the heavy silence that followed, I began the painful task of sifting through memories. Laughter shared on quiet nights, whispered dreams that once lit up our future, and the tender promises we exchanged. Now, each recollection stung like a shard of broken glass. I remembered the early days, when every stolen glance carried the promise of forever. That hope, however, had been betrayed by secrets and lies, and the sweetness of those moments was now tainted with the bitterness of deception. The anger simmering inside me was not just for the betrayal, but also for my own perceived blindness. How had I missed the signs, the late nights, the half-truths, the sudden need for secrecy? Every question gnawed at me, intensifying a fire that threatened to engulf my very being. I rose from the chair and began pacing the hardwood floor, each measured step a painful reminder that time, merciless and unyielding, was slipping away. With every step, the reality settled in. Nothing could restore what had been so carelessly torn apart. As I wandered through the dimly lit room, the weight of our crumbling bond pressed in on me. The woman I once loved had become a stranger, her choices etching permanent scars on my heart. Yet, amid the rubble of our shared past, a fragile ember of possibility glimmered, a chance to redefine myself beyond the confines of this shattered marriage. But hope, I knew, was as delicate as frost on a winter branch, and even a slight tremor could shatter it completely. Unable to bear the confines of the room any longer, I moved to the window and peered out at the neon-lit street below. Life churned on outside. Storefronts buzzed with the noise of the city, and cars hummed along the pavement, indifferent to the chaos within me. That contrast jolted me. Here I was, drowning in regret and anger, while the world moved forward unabated. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but in that moment, I felt a stirring of resolve. Perhaps I could forge a path forward, even if it meant reconstructing myself from the debris of lost love. Yet, the further I gazed into the night, the more my heart pounded with trepidation. Every step into this unknown future felt like plunging into darkness, with no guarantee of redemption or solace. Would I ever learn to trust again? Could forgiveness ever rise from the ashes of such profound betrayal, or was the wound destined to fester indefinitely? These questions circled in my mind like vultures, each one a grim reminder of the painful journey ahead. I wandered back to the center of the room, where every familiar corner now seemed like a relic of a happier time, a time that no longer existed. The echoes of our laughter and the shadows of shared dreams mingled with the overwhelming silence, crafting an atmosphere thick with despair and uncertainty. I felt as if I were caught in a nightmare with no escape, where each memory was a ghost that whispered of what had been lost and what might never be reclaimed. Then, as the night deepened and the clock ticked on with cruel regularity, something unexpected occurred. A knock shattered the oppressive quiet, a hesitant, almost apologetic tap at the door. My heart froze. Who could be visiting at this hour? Was it a friend come to offer solace, or was it something, or someone, else? The sound jolted me from my introspection, stirring a new surge of adrenaline amid the lingering sorrow. I moved to the door with hesitant determination. Every step felt like a descent into a mystery I had long wished to avoid but could no longer ignore. As I reached for the doorknob, the knock came again, more insistent this time, carrying with it the promise of answers or further secrets. My mind raced. Was this the final twist in a story I thought had already ended? With a deep, steadying breath, I grasped the handle and swung the door open, bracing myself for whatever awaited on the other side. The first light of dawn broke through my blinds like a burst of revelation, a signal that today would be different, even if the scars of betrayal still burned. I woke with a steely resolve, my heart hammering with the residue of last night's anguish, yet beneath that raw pain simmered a quiet determination. I couldn't stay trapped in a house steeped in memories and lies. Today, I decided, was the day I would reclaim my life. Without hesitation, I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer's number. Each ring, each clipped word exchanged over the line, felt like a deliberate step away from the wreckage of our shattered marriage. As I explained my decision to file for divorce, I experienced a bittersweet cocktail of sorrow and liberation. I had been entangled in a web of deception for far too long, and now I was severing the bonds that had kept me chained to that painful past. Once the legalities were set in motion, I moved swiftly to secure my finances, blocking our joint accounts with a decisive finality that resonated with every beat of my heart. The days that followed were a blur of action and reflection. I reached out to old friends, those who remembered me before the betrayal, before the weight of secrets had eroded my spirit. Over steaming cups of coffee and in the clatter of familiar bars, we reminisced about simpler times. Their laughter and empathetic nods reminded me that I was not alone, that I still had a place in a world that was brimming with possibility. Every shared memory, every encouraging word, was a small beacon guiding me out of the darkness. Determined to reclaim not just my life but my identity, I dove back into the passions I had once set aside. I laced up my running shoes and joined a local club, the pounding of my feet on the pavement echoing the steady rhythm of a heart on the mend. I even enrolled in a woodworking class, a long-forgotten hobby that now took on a new meaning. Each precise cut of the chisel and every whir of the saw became a metaphor for my own process of reconstruction, carving out space for a future that was wholly mine. At home, I set about transforming the environment that had once been a painful reminder of what I'd lost. I tore down the old faded wallpaper that had witnessed our happiest moments and repainted the walls in bold, resolute colors, a mix of deep blues and warm grays that spoke of strength and renewal. I rearranged the furniture with an almost ceremonial care, each piece finding a new place that resonated with my emerging sense of self. With every change, I was silently declaring that I was no longer defined by a love built on lies. I was rediscovering who I truly was. Yet, the journey wasn't without its moments of loneliness. Late at night, when the silence of the house grew oppressive and memories whispered like ghosts, I found myself wrestling with doubts. Was my decision too hasty? Could I ever learn to trust again? The questions pounded at me relentlessly, each one a painful reminder of the vulnerability that comes with rebuilding a life from ruins. To confront these demons, I turned to journaling, spilling my rawest fears and tender hopes onto paper. In those handwritten pages, I discovered not only the depth of my pain but also the budding resilience within me. One crisp evening, as I sat in my newly reclaimed living room surrounded by the tangible proof of my transformation, an unexpected clarity washed over me. I surveyed the space, the vibrant colors, the thoughtfully arranged furniture, and recognized that what once symbolized a shared dream was now a blank canvas for my future. The betrayal, as excruciating as it had been, was also a catalyst for rebirth. I understood that the end of our marriage was not merely a loss but an invitation to rediscover and reshape myself. The wounds would always be there, a permanent reminder of a love betrayed, yet they no longer held the power to define me. In that profound moment of self-realization, the anxiety that had once consumed me began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet, steadfast resolve. I acknowledged that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and occasional loneliness, but I was ready to embrace every step of it. I had chosen a path of self-determination, one where every setback would serve as a lesson and every small victory as proof of my strength. Then, as twilight approached on the eve of a new chapter, an unexpected knock at the door shattered the calm. My pulse quickened as I moved to answer it, uncertain whether this was yet another twist in the unfolding drama or a sign of closure. I opened the door to find a familiar face, a friend from years past, someone who had always seen through the facades and recognized the true me. Without a word, the friend stepped inside, and in that silent exchange, I felt a surge of reassurance. Perhaps, I thought, the unexpected appearances in life were not just reminders of what was lost but also gentle nudges toward what lay ahead. With a deep breath, I realized that my journey of healing was not linear. It would be punctuated by unexpected challenges and surprising encounters. But in each moment, whether drenched in sorrow or illuminated by hope, I was taking back control. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning," as I welcomed the promise of a future where I was free to redefine my identity. The betrayal had scarred me deeply, but it had also sparked a fire, a relentless drive to rebuild and reclaim my life. And as the night faded into the soft hues of dawn, I stepped forward into an uncertain tomorrow, resolute and determined to emerge stronger than ever before.